Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, I had my mic on mute. All right, how's it going, everybody? I'm Joshua Kemble, as was said at the top. I guess I don't have to actually do an intro. I would just say, if you enjoy these streams and stuff like that, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when I'm about to go live. I'm going to be doing a lot of live streaming in the coming days. And aside from that, consider picking up one of my books, either Jacob's Apartment, which is a slice of life, coming of age story about a doomed romance between two roommates, Jacob and Sarah, who are both going through tumultuous events in their lives. It's a deep dive into the dark childhoods that haunt our adult lives, and also an exploration of loss and its effect on romantic relationships. And it is kind of like if you took Ghost World, put it in a blender with Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. It's kind of like that type of flavor. So if you like those things, you'd probably like Jacob's Apartment. Also, there's two stories. And Two Stories is my autobiographical comic book that talks really openly about my journey learning how to navigate mental illness, basically dealing with depression as well as caregiving for somebody with panic disorder. It juxtaposes two different time eras, childhood and adulthood, and kind of basically contrast the two. So please consider, and that's fully black and white, hand lettered, hand inked, and could be handed to you today. And last I looked, it's actually on at a fairly reasonable price on Amazon, and that may not last. So yeah, we got Gary saying daytime crembling and 100% daytime crembling. We got Vic saying Kemble stream at a reasonable hour. Sick. Nice. Thanks, Vic. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. So what I have to do today is very kind of exciting. I started this actually on Gibran Redinger's podcast, or his show, his After Artcaster show, yesterday, where I was working on basically revising pages, and I got through quite a few of them. I'll grab the ones I got through so far. So I've got this stack of like new, freshly minted, revised pages from the 70-ish pages so far. What ended up happening was I'm working on this book called Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And the author realized in the last panel, she was like, wait a second, like, is that a lampshade? And this is where historical fiction gets tricky. I was like, I guess that is a lampshade. And then we both were talking about, I don't think lampshades really were around at that time, because like most houses didn't use electricity. Most like really well-to-do people were running on gas lamps. And then you had basically like oil lamps, as well as just candles in general. And so I'm having to go through the, oh my gosh, let's see how many pages. Of all the finished pages, we're now working on page 73 is revisions. But I got through, let's see, the pages I had to revise so far were pages 25, page 31, page 66, page 67, page 68. I don't think we had to do 69. That's good. I just felt like it was worth mentioning that number. And then we have page 70, right, that I had to revise, page 71, page 72, and that's where we're at. And now I'm revising page 73. And I'm having to go through and basically take any scene that has basically like any scene that has a lampshade. We got Marsh in the chats too, saying hello, hello. Hi, Marsh, how's it going? Yeah, so any scene that has that, now I'm having to go through and kind of like change out and do really quick revisions. And this might actually be helpful for people who are doing comics or haven't done comics before. The kind of edit that I think is great that an editor will often ask for. Usually it's not going to be so comprehensive where you've gone through so many pages with a background element that you have to kind of work your work out of the final picture. But it does happen, and this is going to show you the advantage of working digitally. I think it'll illustrate that very well, because I think that that basically, like, the other two books that I've done were hand inked, and doing edits was still relatively easy because they were scanned and then brought into be digital. And so that, like, whenever there were final edits that had to be done, they were usually done digitally. But I think it's good for people to see, like, hey, if you're this far into a story and there's something you need to change, it doesn't have to be a crazy time consuming process. That being said, this was a crazy time consuming thing. Um, Vic said Silencio, pencil and ink is superior. It is superior. I love pencil and ink. This is the first book that I've gotten a publishing deal for. That's a comic that I haven't traditionally inked. And I will, for Two Stories Book 2, that'll continue to be traditionally inked. But for the look of this, it was best for me to kind of execute it digitally. But I agree with you, Vic. I'm a big nerd for tradition. It's why even on these digital pages, I'm still mimicking the look of hand lettered lettering because I just am a sucker for hand done stuff. I think it's one of the great things about comics and being a cartoonist. That being said, so that's what I'm going to do. And then the thought was to get a little spicy potentially on this stream. We might get a little spicy. I have to track down the video that we were going through commenting. So we were watching, let's see here. We were watching like Tim Pool having Destiny on. It was another crack at giving the guy a shot. Because, like the first thing that I commented on that was a video by Tim Pool was him debating Emma Vigland from the Majority Report. And it was really interesting. And again, I got a lot of work done while doing it. And I think today on the background, unless otherwise requested by chat, I think we might have some spicy streaming. We might have the spice. If you want the spice, we're gonna give you the spice. So I think I'm gonna continue. We ended up watching another one of Tim Pool's Culture War shows, and this one's bizarre. Like the hold on a second. I'm finding the history here. I have to find my channel history to kind of pull up what we were commenting on. All right, and let me make sure that it's here. Ah, there it is. Haha. And we have it saved in space. So I'm going to go ahead and pause so it doesn't play. Great. So we have it saved in place. So we were doing commentary on the Culture War episode 20, which was debating masculinity with Destiny, John Doyle, and this lady, Lauren Chen. A few things have been noticed so far. One is that John Doyle is not a great spokesperson in debates. I mean, that's become really obvious. He seems pretty clueless with like out of touch with kind of like reality. He's given like parenting advice. It's parenting advice, the type of parenting advice that like a non parent would give. He's given dating advice that an incel would give. He's misdiagnosed what PTSD is, as if PTSD is caused by troops returning from the glory and honor and amazingness of war and having to go back to just being these submissive men. And I don't think anyone, even on the right that I know in my life, would ever define that as PTSD, because PTSD is something that's caused by, you know, being in constant fear of your life and constantly on and having that, and then going back to a world where you don't have to constantly worry about getting killed, and trying to shut that off is close to impossible for people who've experienced wartime for a long time. But this John Doyle, that guy, has falsely diagnosed PTSD. He has made statements about how there used to be a time when kids would get in fistfights over their Legos getting broken on the playground, and that it's a negative thing that we're not there anymore. He said some pretty out of touch, weird things. And so it's a really interesting stream. For me, it's interesting to listen to. So I think what we might do is we might get into the spice. We might do a little more commentary on it. Maybe this John Doyle guy kind of pulls back and recoups some of his madness. We've also noticed that like Tim Pool, when I think it was like the third thing I'd ever seen by Tim Pool in my life, was his debate with Emma Vigeland. And I noticed that it was stacked a little unfairly because Emma Vigeland's leaning left and Tim Pool is on the right. And then he has guests on that are supposed to debate each other, and his guest was on the right. I'm blanking out on the guy's name, but he was actually a pretty intelligent guest on the right. But what ended up happening on the one I watched with Emma Vigeland was, instead of his guest or allowing his guest to kind of debate, as was supposedly the format of the show, he just sort of attacked Emma from like moment one, and then it was like 2v1 the entire time. And I feel like Emma held up. She did some low blows and stuff like that, but it was interesting, you know, the format of the show where it's like 2 versus 1 just seemed a little unfair, to the point where even at the end of that show, Tim Pool himself had said, you know, that wasn't really fair, that we did the 2v1 thing. I think I'll rearrange things so that this doesn't happen, so it's a little more balanced. And he was like, you know, you were a sport for basically putting up with like 2v1 to Emma Vigeland. And then what do we see? Lo and behold, now I'm watching maybe my fourth time seeing Tim Pool, and he has a show on the same exact show. It's what he calls the Culture War, and he now has 3 versus 1, and Destiny's the one on the left, and then the other 2 guests are on the right, and he's on the right. So it's 3 versus 1. So it's interesting to me that he compensated for what he said was unfair by stacking the deck even more unfairly. Luckily, Destiny is a killer debater, and so I think during this, even though it hasn't been much of a debate, it's been very rambly. I think during much of this episode, you know, you have to kind of keep in mind that it's like it is kind of 3 versus 1. The other thing to kind of consider is that Tim Pool himself on this, I've said this on the last 2 times where we were going through this episode, has been relatively moderating like the conversation, unlike the Emma Vigeland one where he was kind of doing the debate for her, like with her and for his guest, which was bizarre because anytime his guest on the last one spoke, it was like refreshing because his guest was actually pretty intelligent, pretty good faith, and then Tim would just come in and say something mad that even his like right leaning guest would be like, "That's not factual."
Dad?
Oh, hang on a sec. What's that? Oh, you want more Cheerios? I gotta get more Cheerios for my dude. So yeah, so that kind of catches us up where we're at. So what we're gonna do is we'll start by I'm gonna get Cheerios for my kid, and we're gonna put a trailer on, and then we're gonna get right into the commentary and revising art pages. So let's switch to our art setup. So you're gonna see the pages that I'm working on revising are gonna be on my right, which I guess would be I think that's on the right of the screen. It's actually to the left of me, the way I'm facing. And then this is going to be a camera just kind of showing, some drawing stuff. And yeah, so that's where we're going to go. So here is the trailer for Jacob's apartment, and I will get your Cheerios. Don't worry. Okay, here we go. Clearly it seems that only in dreams can we be these things we've seen and walk around breathing things. I don't know the part to play in this heart of mine. There's dissonant things, they split at the seams. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're also going to share the video that we'll be commenting on. I'll go ahead and set it up so you can mostly see art and then see a little bit of the video. You'll see a brief ad because I like to play the ads on the videos that I'm doing commentary on, just so that whoever, the content creator is, even if I disagree with them or whatever, they're still getting ad revenue from the play. So here we go. Let's do commentary. Vic said, "Now I want cereal. Tell your son thanks for helping the artist not starve." I did tell him that he gave you the idea to eat cereal, and he smiled and thought that was funny. So right now, while I'm working, what he's working on is he's actually programming like his own little video games. What's the game called that you're playing, Ben?
Bloxels.
Yeah, so he plays on like Bloxels, which is like it's like a video game where you can make and kind of program and design your own little video games, which is pretty rad and very creative. And then he kind of creates these like stories and stuff like that out of them. There's a couple things I have in store for the channel too that I'm really excited about. I've already kind of told you guys a little bit of my plan. So there's some things I'm doing behind the scenes. If you don't know, I recently left my job as a full-time art director, and I have gone back to the wild west of like freelance illustration. As well as like I might be, I'm peeking around for other creative positions if they fit. And while that's happening, I have this whole map and plan of what I'm doing. Every other task that I do is going to be working on this graphic novel because I have a publishing deal for it with a deadline. And I don't want to make Turner Publishing have to wait any longer than they already are having to for this book to come. Adam said, "Hey, Josh, Vic, Gary, and Marsh, how's it going?" So anyhow, so that's what I'm going to be doing. So what I plan on doing is do these revisions, which might take like an hour or two. And then after that, I'm going to work on some stuff off screen, but I will still be streaming. While that happens, you'll just see my lovely face, my lovely visage. And we're going to proceed to, get the next page completed. And once I've completed that page, then I can move on to creating a letter of intent. I've already updated my resume, started sending that out to specific places that I'm kind of interested in. I've updated my CV, which is for adjuncting at colleges, because I personally my hope is to end up in a scenario where I can kind of teach, and then because I've taught college before, and it's really rewarding. Even though the pay is not great, it's incredibly rewarding, and I think that would be fun to do on top of just freelancing and doing comics. So that's kind of, I need to kind of create like a letter of intent, which is like a weird kind of bougie cover letter for some local JCs. And I really love the JC systems because junior college is literally the only way I was able to get educated because I grew up super poor. And so I think that'll be a lot of fun. Adam said, was just watching the replay of Jib's stream with you, Josh. The problem is Jeff has messed up whether it's Gib or Jib for me eternally. I cannot ever pronounce it right. How's it going, Ben? You want to say hi?
Hi.
How's it going? Okay,
So my
this is
dad was
Ben.
talking about Bloxels earlier, right?
Yeah, I was. You want to tell him about it?
Yeah. There was a certain theme. Basically, the default theme of the games in Bloxels. The theme is literally called Snack Time.
There's a theme in Bloxels called Snack Time.
I don't know why it's called Snack Time.
I don't know why it would be called Snack Time. Yeah, that's a good question. So, but yeah, it was really great. I believe it's Gibran. So the last time, just being on Gibran's stream was really fun, and I really enjoyed that. I encourage you guys to check out the last. I think they're calling it like Artcasters After Hours, and they usually start it like right when we're wrapping up Artcasters, and it is a fun and wild and raucous show. And it was kind of a surprise. I was just listening to it while working, and one of their mods accidentally banned me from chat, and so they just pulled me on the show, which was hilarious and fun. So I was kind of hoping they'd like razz their mod a little longer, just because it was funny. But yeah, it was a really good one. Okay, so Adam said I was told he prefers Gib, but Jeff has the honor of calling him Jib. Okay, so it is Gibran. Sonny Gibran Redinger, he's going to be launching a Kickstarter pretty soon. I'm pretty excited about it. And we had a really great conversation while I was kind of working on these revisions. And now we're going to do a spicy commentary. So get ready for spice. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is something you really want me to pay attention to in the chats, best way to do it is through leaving a super chat. Otherwise, I will pay attention to the chat as much as possible. Super chats will always get read, especially, the only time they won't get read is if they're not following YouTube TOS. So as long as you're following the terms of service of YouTube in your comment, I will read it out loud. And if it's a question, I will address it. And what we're going to do is we're going to just work our way up into our last page that's finished, which is page 77. And right now, I got through like almost 10 of these on Gibran's stream, but yeah, so we're gonna work from 73 to page 77 revisions, and we're gonna start doing some commentary. So forgive the ad here. We'll skip it in a second. Vic said, "Would you roundhouse kick a horse for 50 grand?" As long as I could run like hell, and also as long as I'm not judged on my form of the kick, because I can't really do a roundhouse kick. Yes, I would. As long as I have the freedom to run afterwards, and yeah, for 50 grand, I probably would. Maybe I'd roundhouse kick him in the butt, so that it's a much more kind of, I don't know. But that would be a tough one because the horse is going to come at you. So I don't know. That's a really good question. A roundhouse kick, I believe, is when you like flip your leg in the air like super high. You like jump and like spin to kick. My son was asking. Vic was saying, somebody get this man 50 grand.
If they know the answer to it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys can start with super chats. And then we'll see. Maybe we get to 50 grand. And then maybe I have to figure out what to do with the horse. Okay, here we go. Here is the Tim Pool show that we were going to do commentary on. And then what you're going to see in the background, first I'm going to be drawing the replacement part of the lamp in cyan, and on a different layer, and then I will erase the layers underneath it and kind of fuse the layers so that it's easily doable. I'll try to kind of move the layers over too, so you guys can kind of see a little bit of the process. Okay, now let's rock and roll.
Gun, then you need a USCCA membership. Hoping for the best isn't a good defense plan. When it comes to self-defense, you need to be educated, trained, and insured.
By the way,
virtue.
I want to highlight, before we get into this, something that Destiny said in this that I thought was really on point. He was just noticing that the red pill community seems to have this like perception that like everyone is living in Afghanistan, and everywhere you go, like every second of the day, you basically have to like be fighting for your life, like wherever you go, like, because they're so obsessed with just this like, you need to be able to fight, you need to be able to fight for your woman, you need to be able to fight for that. Like, they're obsessed with like this idea of like, what are you gonna do? Like, even this John Doyle guy at one point had said, Adam said, have you listened to any of Tim Pool's music? I might have searched it after I watched the Emma Vigland, where she was kind of clowning on him. I might have looked it up. I might not have been impressed by it. I might have thought it kind of does sound awful. Anyhow, so we've got John Doyle kind of like saying all these weird examples where he's like, what are you going to do if you get off work? This is something he literally said earlier in this discussion that I covered, I think, on the last episode, which would be 293. He said, like, well, what are you going to do if you get off of work and two hijackers come to take your car and you're with your girl and you have to give them your car or get beaten? And I was like, well, first off, like, what? It's just bizarre to me, and Destiny had pointed this out as well, that this John Doyle guy's like perception of reality is that like you're gonna work somewhere where every day you get off work, there's like two hijackers that are just gonna come up to you and be like, "Hey man, give me your car." And number two, it's like this weird assumption that like if somebody's trained in self-defense or martial arts, like, and they're outnumbered and it's just over a car or a wallet, you kind of just can give them it because at the end of the day, that's like the safest option. Most like MMA fighters would say that, you know. I mean, I'm not saying like people wouldn't fight for it because your fight or flight kicks in, but I think most self-defense experts would actually be like, no, you probably shouldn't actually fight for that thing. Just like, you know, give them the wallet or whatever if somebody's trying to jump you for your money, and let them go on and keep your life, right? Because you can't buy your life. You can replace a lot of that other stuff. Also, if you have a car, at least in California, you've got insurance. Yeah, Vic was saying, give him the car. I got insurance and common sense. Anyhow, so that's there's just this bizarre reality that I think at least this John Doyle guy and what I guess the red pill kind of has with like the idea of like the self-defense, like, you know, Thunderdome that we're all having to fight through to live in life. And I don't know what country or what part of the country they're living in. I've lived in some pretty bad neighborhoods, and I've never been in a neighborhood where every single day I had to get in like giant fist fights with all of my neighbors in order to get to work. And I've lived in some pretty bad parts of town, you know, so I don't know. It's just a weird reality that these guys seem to live in. All right, let's continue and check out and see maybe Tim Doyle, like, you know, regains some of his composure. By the way, if you guys are watching this, I really appreciate it. Make sure you've hit that like button, and let's continue. And we're going to get into drawing. So like I said, this is just some background for us to do art to and maybe get a little riled up, maybe have some disagreements. But at the end of the day, we'll all be friends and do art. So here we go.
And nobility of marriage is like, you're in this for the long haul. There is no way out. And so you find a way to make it work. And it's kind of like with abortion, we're like, well, if I know that like worst case scenario, I can get divorced, I can just kill the kid. That tends to happen more often because people just don't commit.
I was going to say too, your point about.
So this is the thing I've also noticed about this John Doyle guy is like, he'll say something like really incendiary and partisan, but he'll do it like real quick. So he'll be like, yeah, I'm just saying like kind of a normal point, and that's why people who want to get divorced are going to get abortions because they want to kill their kid. But anyhow, and it's like he just kind of sneaks it in, so it's like hard to address. And the other thing that's a little difficult is then Tim will kind of pick up the ball instead of letting his guest, who would clearly disagree with that, you know, speak. He's like, yeah, and that actually leads to, and it's like, oh, okay, now we're back on another like Republican talking point. But let's continue.
About raising kids in a better household, or what we know is good for kids. I think it's fair to say that there is an overlap between the people who are more likely to abort their kids and people who are likely to be in open relationships, right? Conservatives more likely to be monogamous, less likely to get an abortion. So
nice.
A lot of these dating preferences that involve multiple people or things like that, less likely to result.
Benji said, I think the guy you're talking about is probably crazy. I just thought I'd highlight that. Okay.
Than having kids.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. We could say maybe less likely, but ultimately there are going to be kids in situations like this.
Of course.
And likelihood of abuse when you have a non-biologically related father in a household, it skyrockets. And that's just talking about the extreme case of abuse, not even to mention just general socialization and stuff like that. So I think.
Wait, what? Okay. Oh my goodness. I forgot. Okay. So this was the point in the discussion where they were saying, this is something that, John Doyle had said. They made the claim that, basically two gay parents aren't parents, which I thought was bizarre because it's like, you know, and kind of just almost like making the claim that if you're not like biologically the parent, you're not a parent. And to me, it's like, hey, if you take care of your kid and provide them with sustenance and take care of their needs and stuff like that, you know, that actually makes you a parent. But I think they were continuing on that train of thought. So I think that's where they're saying the violence is higher for non-biological parents. And I'm kind of curious, like, again, this is where these shows can be really frustrating because, you know, I'm doing art, but it would be fun to look up if that statistic is even real, right? Like, I would want to look that up because it sounds to me like that's not even real. Hopefully Destiny will challenge it, but yeah, it sounds like a stat she's just making up.
This is not a good trend. It's not healthy for society. Does that mean that we should find where this Adam 22 guy lives and kind of tar and feather him? No, but we should absolutely be able to say this is not
Oh, okay. And this is like they were having a discussion about a guy who hosts a show called No Jumper that's generally been about like really like deep cut like Instagram rap. And I think he's a porn star or something. He's not like the most like moral. He's not like a pinnacle of like, morality or anything like that. And yet like, he lives his own life and whatever, who cares? But they're kind of obsessing about this sort of question of their kind of obsession with other people's relationships. I forgot that it was going in this route with the conversation. So it'll be interesting. I said this at the top when on like I think 2 episodes ago when we took on this particular commentary, was that this is going to get really weird because it's kind of that red pill dating advice type stuff. And it's awful. It's really hard to wade through. It's just there's so much to unpack. But we'll continue because it is spicy and interesting. And hey, we're working on revising lamps. Okay.
Where we want to be going. as a
I do
culture.
want to ask you a follow-up too. You mentioned gay parents are traditional.
I think they score the best in outcomes because of the hoops have for adoption.
My question was, does that exclude lesbian parents?
I think it's only for gay parents are the ones I've seen it. 'Cause
The red
men
pill
are
people
better.
would,
Okay,
yeah,
men are
that's
just
what
better than
red
women.
pill
Okay.
people might say.
I'm
It's
sorry.
just 2 fathers even
Because
better.
the lesbians, they like beat the crap out of each
MGTOW.
other.
The
Very
ultimate
high
evolution
rates
of
of
red pill
domestic-
is going to be guys just realizing that being gay is better, have sex with your homies, improve each other's businesses,
That's the
like,
most masculine
don't deal with
thing.
crazy fucking women, no periods, no pregnancies. Like it's just
Ultra
the best way to go.
MGTOW.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Now I feel like what Destiny's saying is praying not that off. Like there's so much like inherent misogyny in that kind of movement that it just kind of stems down to like a hatred of women, and you do kind of wonder what the underlying like fact of the matter is there, because it's so just opposite from my experience of reality. I think most people's experience of reality, that it's just kind of bizarre to see these like grown men who just like absolutely despise women as much as they do. It's strange to see because it's like, yeah, you just kind of wonder maybe they're repressing something. So yeah.
just dudes being bros, nothing else.
True.
Well,
Women exist for social credit only. Okay?
Well, I made that joke because there's been this thing going around about males breastfeeding, trans women inducing
Oh,
lactation to
no.
breastfeed babies. And so my joke was that
Now they're going to go into like trans issues. Like okay, so this is one of the most annoying things about the current right. I feel like there was an era in time, and this might just be me getting older, right? I feel like there was a point in time where there were actual policy disagreements, where it wasn't just wedge issues. But now that I think back, it's like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's always been that. But it just seems to me like even thinking about like who's running for president right now, it's like I could definitely give you like a platform of like what policy positions like Joe Biden has, whether you like him or not. I could actually give you like a rough idea of what sort of policies he would be advocating for. And I feel like when it comes to the Republican candidates, I have really no idea what they're advocating for. Like, I don't know if they're for low taxes. I don't know what their policy is. I just know they really, really hate trans people and they hate gay people. It's like I don't know much other than that. And it's a very strange state of being where that would be the thing that's like motivating somebody's vote, and also it's very strange that like here's a political show. I guess the whole point of it's to talk about culture war issues. But man, why are we pivoting to like every single group you can kind of hate? Let's continue.
now that we've grown a sheep in a bag. They have this bag, they put the sheep in it, and it grew. And so it's like, if we can grow babies in pods, like have you guys seen that commercial that went viral where it was like in the future and it shows all these pods with the babies in it? What do you need women for? The dudes can breastfeed. The pods can grow the babies. It'll just be a bunch of dudes hanging out, drinking beers, banging each other. They don't need women for anything.
Based. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
But it is absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to break down in that, like growing babies in test tubes. Does it kind of feel like I shouldn't say test tubes, but in pods. Like, does it seem like that's where we're going?
That's absolutely where
Probably,
we're
yeah.
going. We're already commoditizing birth with
Okay,
things
let's
like
pause this. Okay, let's just highlight the sycophants that he has on the right on his show. Okay. So Tim Pool brings up this crazy example of like pod babies, like a sci-fi idea of like we're gonna grow babies in pods. And maybe there's some science that's like indicating that this could be a thing. So then he ends his statement about this with, "Is that where we're going?" And his guest goes, "This is absolutely where we're going." And I've noticed that she basically has done that with anything he says, where he says, "That's absolutely true." It's like, can you be more of a sycophant? Like, you're literally honestly answering that you think that we're going to just have pod babies and that's the future. You said that with a straight face, not like, it's probable. It's like, no, absolutely, that's where we're going. Okay, let's continue.
surrogacy.
Yep.
So I don't think test tubes is that far. And I think the most dystopian part of that would be babies being sold and bought as commodities, which isn't dependent on the test tube. That's happening right now.
Yeah, I think that we've become much more degenerate and general as a society, especially in terms of relationships.
This John Doyle guy, too, I swear every time he speaks, it's like, okay, so now he's going to pivot to saying, like, how degenerate and horrible society's gone. Okay, well, sorry, I've listened to, like, the first half of this, so my patience with him is really slim because I haven't heard him say, I think, one thing that I even slightly agree with the entire conversation. Maybe this will be the time. Who knows?
Like, people aren't raised to be husbands or wives. People aren't taught about these virtues that are important for, being in a successful monogamous relationship. I've gone to many relatives like 50th wedding anniversary parties. Yeah, they'll make jokes about like, oh, I hate my wife. Just sort of like a timely thing, I guess. But ultimately, they have like very successful marriages. And I think that as we've sort of moved away from those things, you're seeing more problems. The divorce rate is higher. People are exploring alternatives. But I don't think it's better. I don't think the answer to not doing marriage correctly because you weren't ready for that responsibility is to abandon the idea of monogamy and then try to pursue something like an open relationship, which for some people it does work. I'm not gonna, like, a lot of the trad cats want to like look at Destiny and be like, he's miserable with his like Aryan snow princess wife and millions of dollars. I'm not going to make that argument. For some people it does work. The problem is I feel an obligation as someone with an audience to shame that type of relationship because it cannot be normalized within the consciousness of the masses as an alternative. We must pursue what is right and true. And if some people want to deviate, that's fine. We'll.
Okay, so did he just say that like he's just trying to publicly shame, like, even though he thinks that, oh my gosh. Did that even make sense? Where it's like, hey, I'm not gonna like grandstand and say these are all like bad things and will lead to the destruction of everyone, but I'm also gonna publicly shame it and say it's a bad thing and it's gonna lead to the destruction of everyone. Did he literally just do that pivot in the same sentence? It's amazing.
Round them up later, but for the time being we have to pursue what we know works, and I just don't think these alternate models work, let alone at a mass scale.
Right. And I think there's a good
So let's pause here and say, okay, I know that there's some people where it might work, but I think we should publicly shame it because we need to promote models that work, even though that I just said that kind of works for some people, but yeah, but we're only going to promote okay. The circular nature of this, the self-defeating arguments that just spew out of John Doyle's mouth, like where he will say one thing and then contradict it within the same like span of like a minute, less than a minute, almost in record time. It's kind of stunning.
there's a good point to be made there. We can talk about something not working because the actual outcomes are just not practical, not pragmatic. But there's also the question that's kind of separate of,
wait, did she
is
just
it in
hop
line
in?
with, I guess, what is true and just?
Okay, I want to back this up a little bit. Did she actually say yes, absolutely, and then start talking again? Hold on. Okay, let's go back to like, Okay, let's go back like just a second. Okay, how does she come into this conversation?
See what we know works, and I just don't think these alternate models work, let alone at a mass scale.
Right, and I think there's a good point to be made there. We can talk about something not
she didn't
working
say
because
absolutely.
the
Okay,
actual
that's good.
outcomes are just not practical, not pragmatic. But there's also the question that's kind of separate of, is it in line with, I guess, what is true and just, which is something that I think Christians have started falling off with completely. And you mentioned the whole gay parent thing. I don't think we do enough shaming of how like straight couples ruined marriage before gays even got into it.
That's real.
True.
No
Where did
fault
all
of
these
us.
open relationship poly people come from?
Yeah.
They came from monogamous relationships. That's
Yeah.
the problem. See, so clearly it's not the superior relationship.
Do you remember when
Stop.
Chelsea Handler had that viral video? See, this is the silly thing, in culture war politics. I got roped into criticism. So, Ben Shapiro, a handful of other people are like, Chelsea Handler is miserable. She's got no kids in her life and she's single. I never said that, but they acted like.
Okay, so let's pause here and say this is Tim Pool again with the skateboard being like, hey guys, I'm cool. I'm not like completely right wing. I'm cool like you. On a culture war issue, like, see, I'm so moderate. He's not moderate. Don't be fooled. This guy is not a moderate. Okay, let's continue.
Like I did. Chelsea Handler made that video where she says she wakes up in the morning, does drugs and masturbates. And I said, that woman is probably happier than a pig in shit. She's like doing whatever she wants. She's rich. I don't see her as being unhappy. I think a lot of this is projection from people who think that lifestyle is a net detriment, need them to be unhappy.
Yes. This is something I try to communicate to people, and it's impossible. I don't know if it comes with age or experience or what, but one of the most detrimental things that you can operate through in life is that there's some sort of like karmic balance that guy that bullied you in high school, he's going to grow up and he's going to be fucking miserable. I know, but he might not be. He might have a dad that owns a business, and he might not only might he not be miserable, he might be super happy. He might realize what he did was wrong. He might live a more virtuous and better life than you ever will. There are people that are truly shitty people that are happy and have fun and do good, and they learn from their mistakes. This running around in the world and operating under this assumption that like that guy, this is why the cuck hunting stuff is so fun to me, is these people, a lot of them virgins, a lot of them miserable for a lot of reasons, so why they consume a lot of this content, will be on Twitter tweeting at like Adam22 or me like, I know fucking miserable you fucking are, because if you fucking ever do this shit, and it's like, bro, are you okay? Like, healthy people don't spend. People draw so many. I've got so much fan art of me watching my wife fucking some black dude. I'm like, bro, there's no way that a healthy guy is drawing this picture. Yeah, and the whole time, like thinking like, oh, I know this is gonna fucking trigger the fuck out of him. Like, dude,
that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like,
yeah, it is. Like, Jesus,
of the appeal of that whole genre of content is like that guy, just like Stacy's gonna be miserable. She's gonna hit the wall. And so you've got like some guys like.
I mean, that's actually a really valid point. Like, one of the things I was noticing too is like I'm obviously just commenting on this a little bit to provide content while I work on art, right? I just replaced the lamps on this page. I'm gonna go ahead and save this page. I'm gonna print this out, and then we're gonna make a JPEG of it, and we're gonna move on to the next page. But that's a pretty good point that that Destiny made, where he was just basically saying like it's kind of insane that there's people who like are so obsessed with other people's relationships that they're going to do like fan art of them, to try to like trigger them or something like that. And I noticed that in general about like the first time I ever did commentary on this Tim Pool guy, there are people out there online who are like so obsessed with like their talking head online that they search YouTube looking for people who actually talk badly about the person they like, to the point where they'll just like spam comments and stuff on my YouTube in response to it. And it's, to me, so baffling, because to get into the headspace like of this type of person is just bizarre to me. Like, I love Chris Ware. I think Chris Ware is probably my favorite artist. I think it is very bizarre and almost surreal to think about this. But I guess if I were to go on YouTube and look up Chris Ware sucks, and then if like there was a YouTube video that's talking trash about my favorite artist, then I can go on those in the YouTube comment sections and be like, how dare you say that Chris Ware sucks? Oh, I'm so mad. Yeah. And like write a novel. I don't understand it. I don't do that with things I like. Like, things I like. And if people talk crap about them, like, I'm not seeking out naysayers of like things I like. It's just a really weird habit. Similarly, like the weird obsession with like other people's relationships is so bizarre to me. It's always been strange to me. Because again, like maybe I'm old school, but I come from like that idea of just like live and let live. Like who cares what people do in the privacy of their own homes as long as it's not harming anyone. Okay. We're going to play a trailer real quick. And then when I come back, we're going to continue replacing lamps. That's right. Excitement. Replacing lamps in our comics so that they're more period appropriate. Let's see if I can find a good trailer here. Let's start with Philip Chandler's testimonial. Here it is.
Hi, my name is Phil Chandler. I'm a freelance artist, illustrator, and cartoonist. Today, though, however, I want to tell you about a graphic novel I picked up recently called Jacob's Apartment. This book was both written and beautifully illustrated by Joshua Kemble. It is the story of a doomed romance that causes the main character to question his beliefs and his faith, while he's also going through other tragedies in his life. Every page has been illustrated by hand and digitally colored with painstaking detail. It is an emotional story that causes you to think and even question things in your own life. And while the story is a tragedy, it is one that I was completely entertained by and I highly recommend. You can currently find this on Amazon or even check in with your local bookstore and see if you can order it. And while you're at it, you can also check out my Instagram at Phil Chandler Arts and also my YouTube channel by the same name, Phil Chandler Arts. And go buy Jacob's Apartment.
Oh, I love it. So Marsh said, most people I know think Liefeld sucks, but I don't go and attack them. Well, maybe we're just unusual, Marsh. Maybe you should start like looking on YouTube. Just type in Liefeld sucks in the search menu, and then when something comes up that's razzing Rob Liefeld, just write like a novel in the YouTube channel comments, just to be like, "You're wrong, I dare say. Rob Liefeld is a genius," and just go on this whole tirade. Apparently, that's a pretty common thing. I don't know. Adam said, "My Chris Ware sucks videos are the most popular videos on my channel." Nice. Now I'm gonna have to hunt for them, Adam, so that I can write my great American novel in your YouTube comments. What do you think about that? Oh, Ben, I'm being sarcastic. I was joking. Benji's like, maybe you shouldn't do that. It's funny that a 9-year-old hears that idea of like going to YouTube and writing a novel in the comments section might not be the most healthy thing. A 9-year-old can understand that.
No, I'm just saying that you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, Benji knows, like, you probably shouldn't do that. Listen to my 9-year-old son, you guys. He's right. You probably shouldn't do that. If somebody dislikes something you like, guess what? That's okay. We all have different tastes. We all have different things. We all have different political viewpoints. We all have different favorites. It's okay to be different. That's okay. It's okay. Deep breath. Okay. Vic said, I like Liefeld because he's a nice guy, even if he can't draw feet. I have defended Liefeld, and I don't think he's a good artist. No offense, Marsh. But I've defended him because, for one thing, when he got signed, he was like 19? He was a way better artist at 19 than I was at 19. Are you kidding me? If you put me at 19 in charge of like a new X-Men title or something, there's no chance, no shot I'm going to draw it as well as he did. So that's one thing I keep in mind, is like his most famous stuff that gets panned the most often is stuff that he made when he was like a late teen. And honestly, not a lot of late teens draw that well. So he, like, comparatively, like, he was a million times better. The other thing is his sense of self-awareness and humor about himself. To me, that won me over. I used to be one of those guys like clowning on Liefeld all the time, and I'll make a pouch joke here or there, or a foot joke, like how he hides feet and stuff like that. But most of the time I've kind of backed off on it because he's kind of cool about it. I think he even made a comic book cover called The Pouch, where it was like a pouch with pouches as a character. And I'm like, okay, I can't dislike the guy because he's aware of the joke. And I've seen a video where somebody confronts him at like a comic convention and was like trying to be like, "Oh, Liefeld, you're awful," or something. And he kind of asks him to like draw a bunch of cliche Liefeld stuff. And Liefeld actually was like super polite, like did the drawing for him, took a picture with the guy, and the guy left and was like, now I kind of like Liefeld. And I was like, that's the way to be. That's the way to be. It's kind of like a Shatner approach to life, right? Where you could either go, you know, if you're in Star Trek, you can go one of two routes. You can go Nimoy or you can go Shatner. Nimoy kind of leaned against the joke and became the butt of a lot of jokes. And then Shatner just kind of leaned into it and made entire like music albums where he's playing up his Shatnerness. I think if I have to pick between the two, I'd rather approach that kind of thing in a Shatner or Liefeld-esque way.
Don't worry, little bro. I've got the suit. I've got the watch. Shut up, bitch. And he's like, yeah, get her.
I think for a lot of conservatives, the reason why they would say Chelsea Handler is miserable actually stems from the conservative view that society would improve or be better with stable relationships where kids are raised by a mother and a father.
Not just that, but it's also the conservative view that something that is, I guess.
Do you also see the loop here where they go back to this mother and father thing, even though Destiny had pointed out a statistic that it actually turns out that like gay parents like are actually better parents, generally have healthier kids. It's just kind of bizarre. Like, again, like this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy loop of like, yes, and like they're all yes ending each other. Like this is one Republican improv session where it's like everybody's high-fiving each other. I will say credit to Destiny in the sense that he's doing pushback, but I've mentioned this before. One of the things I like about him is he kind of matches the energy in the room. So if people are like kind of casually pushing back, he casually pushes back. If they go hard, he'll go hard. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but I will give him credit for kind of being the voice of reason in the room. Even though, again, like even Destiny, I don't agree with all his lifestyle choices and stuff, but it's this weird thing where you can actually like an individual, even if you disagree with some of their personal choices in life, right? Because strangely enough, a lot of those choices really have nothing to do with you, right? Anyhow, let's continue. Oh, we got more Liefeld stuff. So, let's see here. What was it? Oh, Vic had said that he's a nice guy even if you can't draw feet. Paul Pate said, "I hate golf. I do too. I don't understand it. I could probably enjoy golf if you were just going to a golfing like driving thing and you're just hitting the ball super hard, but the rest of it just seems really boring. And I know it's supposedly yeah, but anyhow, Marsh said, well, he's a smart kid who has smart parents. Nice. And then Paul said, I rage post about Tiger Woods every day. Adam said, oh, I think that was in regards to Ben saying like, hey, that's not a great idea to like go and rage post on somebody's YouTube channel for like write the great American novel in their comment section about how wrong they are. Paul said, by the way, if somebody does want to write the great American novel in my comments section, feel free to, because it actually helps the algorithm and helps me get more views. So if you want to rage post in my comments section, go for it. It also gives me more content because I'll probably read a lot of those rage posts on stream because they're funny. Anyhow, let's see here. Adam said Liefeld's newer artwork has more accurate anatomy, a lot less stylistic and dynamic, though. Yeah, I think that might be the thing. There was definitely something about Liefeld. It's interesting, like, if any of us could trade places with that guy, and when we were 19, to be able to, like, set a tone and look that even, like, the greats are trying to mimic because for some reason your books sell really well, even if they're drawn terribly. I mean, dude, I think I would exchange seats with him in a heartbeat. I mean, that's a really cool thing. A lot of people clown on him for being in like a Levi's commercial, but it's like, dude, if you were 19, you're at the top of the world in comics. You know, everyone's saying like your books, like your sales numbers are just insane. You know, you're outselling like the masters. You know, you're buddying around with like all these guys that are like changing the dynamic and look of comics at the time, right? That's the feeling. And you know, Levi's approaches you. I think it was like Spike Lee or something approaches you and is like, dude, I want you in a Levi's commercial. Of course you would take the money and do the Levi's commercial. Don't clown on him for that. Although it's a funny commercial, but I'm just saying we all would have done it or worse. Okay. Vic said, Josh stole my ignorancy improv joke. Oh, nice. And then Vic said, listen, I still have some time to do that. Nice. But that is the thing. It's like ignorance improv, where it's like yes ending each other on just this, like, you know, they'll say something like really outlandish where it's like, and I just don't think that blah, blah, blah. And then the other person's like, yes, end, and says something more outrageous. Let's continue.
In terms of your sensories, your senses,
sensories.
something that is good and pleasurable, that is not necessarily the highest end. We are not put on this earth. I don't know. The meaning of life for me is not just to pursue hedonistic ends. So Chelsea Handler, she has drugs and a big house. That's nice. But is there actual like further lifelong?
So here's a question: when did hedonism become a word again in the vernacular? Like, is this common verbiage on the right? Like, I mean, I'm a Christian, okay? And like, I have never been like, I haven't met another Christian that's like walking around calling people, like, saying hedonism. Like, that's just a real like medieval Spanish Inquisition style word to be thrown around, where it's like, look, I might say that life is not about your hedonistic desires and your oh my gosh, like your apostatic, I guess. Like I guess they should start calling people apostates too. Just go full bore. Let's bring back the Inquisition. It's the weirdest group. Okay. Anyhow, let's continue.
Joy in that, or is she just kind of having fun? Those things are not the same. And I think conservatives don't do a good job articulating that, because obviously she's a millionaire, she's having a good time, but does that bring her deeper meaning?
Yeah.
This is the scary thing about short-sightedness of the conservative position in saying that like Destiny would be unhappy or Chelsea Handler would be unhappy. The problem,
we don't take the time to define what happiness is.
well, but I think the fear that I have is
The Beatles already defined it. They said happiness is a worm gun. Okay.
we would be too happy. You know, there's this quote I read a long time ago when I was reading about Fermi's paradox, and some scientist guy, you guys should probably find the quote. He said, if humans ever, greet and shake hands with aliens, it will be not to celebrate overcoming nuclear weapons, but because we overcame the Xbox. In that humans are, for whatever reason, being driven towards pleasurable outcomes.
So here's the thing: is Tim Pool's whole thing just kind of rattling off like weird hypotheticals about like the future, where he's like, guys, aliens are gonna take our souls after we finish playing Xbox. I don't know, it's kind of crazy because they're gonna have babies in tubes. By the way, you should vote for, like, what is this guy's appeal? Like, is it that he has a skate park and he says he's a cool guy? Cool Tim Pool? Like, is that it? I don't understand the appeal of this dude. Vic said happiness is curb stomping a heathen. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Gary was saying, yes, that's a big part of Pool's thing. It's funny that I've already decoded it after, like, I think I've seen this guy 4 times in my life, like maybe on 4 things. I think the first time I heard of him was actually on Majority Report, where they were making fun of his band, and it was funny. The second time was when I think I just checked out one of his shows. I'm like, who is this guy? And the third time, I believe, was the last one I watched, which was him just talking to Emma Vigland. And then the fourth time has been this dude rocking a knit cap with his cool guy custom guitar behind him. I don't know, but there is all this compensation. Have you guys noticed this? I noticed this with what's his name? And now I'm blanking. Oh, Steven Crowder. there's like a compensation thing where on their shows, like they have to have like weapons. Like I think Steven Crowder, like the one we watched on here, he was wearing like side holsters, like under both of his armpits during his show, and I was like, oh my gosh, is he that insecure where he's got to like he literally wants to be like just strapped with guns like as he's doing his stream. And then the same thing, like Tim Pool here, it's like he has to have his sword and musket just like crossed, like right visually right next to him in an X, just to be like, I'm a man, I got weapons. It's a funny thing. I don't know. Is this like a thing that's on all like right leaning shows? Maybe I'm not familiar enough now, but do all right leaning shows usually have weapons in the background?
It's like the experiment we did with the mice where we put the electrode in the brain to stimulate dopamine, like you mentioned the other night. The rat or the mouse would just keep.
You guys, what do you think about me like updating my background where I'll have like a crossed like T square and like another kind of ruler or something? What do you guys think? Would that be good decor?
Spamming the button because it feels good, and that's what we're doing. So I think when conservatives come out and they say Chelsea Handler is miserable, I'm like, no way, dude. She's happier than someone's probably ever been. And that actually is the issue.
No, but she's not happier than.
But you guys, he's cool because he's got a katana, a guitar, and a musket, and a skate park.
And someone who could ever be. She's having more fun, but that's not the same. And I
disagree. I think she's stimulating dopamine to the extreme degree.
What Lauren is getting at is, and it's a really good point, but people don't talk about it because they're too busy tearing down other things than making good arguments for their own things. There's a difference between happiness and fulfillment.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Happiness is scrolling TikTok for 12 hours. Fulfillment is spending 12 hours reading a book and finishing it, right? There's a marked difference in the body, the way that affects your psychology, the way that it impacts the way you move through life, because people that are more willing to endure some fiction to reach some fulfillment are probably going to have holistically a better outcome.
Ben said happiness is among us.
Imagine if somebody commented that in your comment section.
I think because he likes Among Us, the game where you're trying to figure out who's the most sus. I'd say in this game, if this was Among Us, I feel like every time Tim Pool tries to make like a I'm a cool guy play, I feel like that's very sus. And I want to like call an emergency meeting. There's an imposter among us.
But when people spend all their time shitting on other people's happiness, it's like it doesn't seem like you're advocating very well for your lifestyle. Yeah.
So I guess the better way to frame it is short-term happiness versus long-term happiness. In that you're right. You know, someone who has a family and kids and is, you know, they're older and they can see all their grandkids and they see everything they've done is going to have this like profound like wow. And somebody who just did drugs and masturbated all day is going to be older and be like, well, you know, I can do that again. I guess the difference is if you exercise every day and eat healthy, you're going to feel really, really good. But when you're sitting in that moment eating a chocolate fudge sundae, you feel really good right now. And so having that balance is important.
There's a difficult thing striking that balance too. I remember I got into an argument with one guy. This was like 4 or 5 years ago when we were arguing about investing money. I think it was another content creator, and this guy fucking.
I kind of like Marshall's statement here. He said, "I don't know what they do on right-leaning shows or left-leaning shows. I'm generally against leaning." Nice. Welcome, Mosh. Welcome to the world where we can actually have disagreements and get along and maybe like not just tick off every box on a party line. Gary says, Marsh makes comics. If you've got time to lean, then you've got time to clean. Nice. Paul said, I lean against leaning. And then Vic said, I drink lean and spit it on those who lean against leaning. Wow, there's a lean thing going here. Lean into art is the only leaning I need. Nice. Is that Jersey Drozd old thing? I feel like that was he was going to do like classes or something called Lean into Art back in the days of BIPT and Art and Story, ladies and gents, for us old veterans. Let's see here. So we have just finished the revision, so I just have to find which revision real quick, and then we'll get back to this hilarious commentary. I have to admit, though, like that, maybe you guys will see the fascination here. Oh, I like Paul Pate saying gangsta lean. Nice. Adam said, yeah, Jersey's show. Nice. And Marsh said, I am cleaning. That's hilarious. It would be funny if that was actually in response. Like, what we don't see is the backstage where Gary is like actually over at Marshall's place, and he's like, hey, if you got time to lean, then you got time to clean. And Marshall's like, crap, I gotta clean. Anyhow, okay, let's find. So we have page 73 was the one we just finished. It's still open, I know, but we're gonna open page 74, possibly. If this has, we're basically like hunting, like mad lunatics. We are lampshade hunting. Get those lamps. I got a problem with lamps. I got an enemy, and its name is lamps. If you got a lamp, I know how to solve it. Okay. Okay, let's play a trailer real quick. Yeah, Marsh said Lean Into Art is the podcast Jersey and Rob Stenzinger were doing. Not sure if they still do it. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really touched base with Jersey in years, but I do remember that. Yeah, originally he was going to have it be like the Lean Into Art Academy or something. It was kind of interesting. He had like me and Kevin involved in it initially. Nice. Vic said Josh has turned into a lamp pillar. That's right. I'm not red pill or blue pill. I'm lamp pill. That's right. Okay. You guys just haven't seen the matrix of what's wrong with lamps in comic books. I should do that. I'll offer my services, ladies and gentlemen. If you have lamps you want destroyed in your comics, reach out to me. I might be able to, at a reasonable fee, replace your lamps with oil lamps rather than electric lamps.
Why don't you just... That's... I don't know what he means, but I bet that's just a joke, right, Dad?
Benji said, I don't know what dad means, but I bet that's just a joke, right, Dad? Yes, it is, Ben. You are very smart to catch that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and play the trailer for...
My dad is a very big jokester.
Benji said, my dad is a very big jokester. That's right. I do joke a lot. Okay, so here is the trailer, the Christmas trailer for Two Stories. And we'll come back and we'll continue our tirade, our journey across Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning as lamp assassins. Okay? Here is Two Stories. And we'll continue our commentary. I think there's still a good hour left. I don't know if I can get through it, guys. I appreciate your support in the chats. I don't know if I can do it, but we'll try. Okay. Here is Two Stories. Paul asked if Destiny has blue hair. Yes, he did it as a joke. So he was doing volunteering for like a campaign in Georgia, and he made like some fundraising goal where he was like trying to get people to donate for like some children's thing or something during the campaign thing. And he said he'd basically bleach and dye his hair blue as a joke because everybody calls liberals like blue haired, whatever. And then I think he's kind of stuck with it because it's pretty ballsy, like for him as a left-leaning guy to just kind of show up like at a debate as the literal blue-haired liberal. So that's why he continues to rock the blue hair. And honestly, I kind of hope he keeps it. He's stuck with it for about a year, but I kind of hope he keeps it because I think it's very funny. It triggers a lot of people. I don't know. I just think that's funny. Okay. Paul was saying, snuff out the light of those lamps. That's what we're going to do, guys. We're taking on lamps. We're taking on Big Lamp. Okay, let's continue with our commentary and take on Big Lamp on page 74 of Not Death But Love.
This guy blew every fucking dollar that he had. And I remember talking to him, it was like, our jobs are like pretty like transitory. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this. Aren't you scared that you're like wasting all of your money right now? Like, you don't invest anything. And the guy's like, well, aren't you scared that you won't get to have fun and spend any money until you're 45? And I was like, fuck, I guess maybe. Damn, I didn't think about it that way. And he's like, yeah, like I might have some fucky shit when I'm like 40 and 50 and 60 or whatever. But like, I'm in my 20s right now. I want to have a lot of fucking fun. And I think the memories I make right now are really cool. And I'm going to do that. I'm like, okay. And I'm not advocating that you should spend all of your money today, accumulate a ton of debt, and then live on Social Security or be fucked for the rest of your life. But I mean, like, there is something to be said for striking a balance. It can't be all arduous, suffering, vegetarian, gym every day, no fun whatsoever for your life. Like, you have to find a way to balance the happiness and the fulfillment at the same time.
I do think
that's actually a fair point. And let's see here. Aside from that, I also want to point out that that he was talking about not everybody doing arduous gym work. This is me, the non-jock nerd who grew up like as far in distance from like any sort of workout forever, and then managed in the last 2 years to kind of do a daily workout up until I got this book deal, because balancing that with the book with my day job that I had at the time as an art director was close to impossible. Guess what I've been doing for the last 3 days like a maniac? Working out. That's right. Every single morning for the last 3 days, the first thing I do when I wake up is like get in a decent workout, and I feel great. So I just wanted to point that out. And is that a humble brag? No, that's just a straight up brag. And it's kind of a joking brag because, as you can see, these guns are not really worth bragging about. But I still did my workout. So take that, science. I don't even know what that means.
There is a high likelihood that the modern culture around, free sex, do whatever you want, very short-term thinking is going to result in a lot of unhappy people. I think we're actually seeing it already in that many millennials and younger have little to no skill. And so you've got people who are struggling to find work, don't have no fulfillment. They feel like they have no purpose. That's terrifying when you think about where that goes in 20 or 30 years.
Uh-huh.
But I wonder because people's perspectives change. But when you look at that common trope of nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I worked more. Everyone's always like, where's my family and stuff. There's going to be a lot of people. I was talking about this with Chelsea Handler. This was my criticism of her was. It was not that she was unhappy. I don't think she's unhappy. I think she's very happy. However, me personally, based on my worldview, I imagine her 68, 70 years old in a cold and sterile hospital bed.
Okay. I just do not find what Tim Pool is saying any bit convincing. And I'm not a Chelsea Handler fan. Like, I'm a lefty, but I don't even find Chelsea Handler funny. I'll be honest. I just don't think she's that funny. Not my cup of tea, not my style of humor. But like, first off, like, why is he obsessing about Chelsea Handler? And then second off, like, what is this obsession with, like, yeah, but they're going to be miserable. Like, the long-term gain isn't going to be as good as the short-term fulfillment. And this kind of like take as if it's like some sort of hot take to like, okay, if you invest money, it's less fun now, but in the future, you're going to be thankful that you did. Or if you like invest the time into going to college and gaining a skill, then, it's going to suck in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to have more job prospects. Like, why is that? I don't understand why this is so profound to people that this guy has like this giant following. I mean, that's a good thing, I guess, to kind of think long term as well as short term. I mean, I think that's a smart idea, I guess. But it's like, did you need like weird, cool skateboard guy to tell you that? I don't know, like, because I remember when I was making the decision to get like higher education and stuff, I grew up poor. I couldn't afford school. It cost a lot of sacrifice. I had a lot of friends who'd go to parties and do all sorts of fun things. And instead, I'd be like working on homework. It's like the cliche, where it's like, yeah, I put my nose to the grindstone, and then it ended up leading to some better life opportunities later on because I took the time to do that. And who knows, maybe it won't, long term. But this, like, there's a couple things about this that are wrong. One is, and I think Destiny already kind of brought this up, and I think he's trying to find common ground, and I'll give him credit for this. But it's like, one is, this whole fantasy that like, like karmic justice always is going to happen on this earth is just a straight up fantasy. Like, there's a lot of douchebags out there with a lot of money. There's a lot of people out there who've made bad short-term decisions and have kind of ended up okay. And there's a lot of people out there who made all the right short-term decisions and all the right long-term decisions, and they're doing awful, right? Like, that's to me, I think that might be one of the big dividing lines, I think, between somebody with like Tim Pool's, what seems like his kind of worldview, and somebody with like mine, where it's like, I think that unfortunately, like, some people just end up in really bad circumstances that aren't of their own making. It's just like undeniable to me at my age. It's like, I know artists that like are killer artists. Like, they're killer artists. They're so good, and they can't make a living doing art. It's like, and they've done all the right things. I know artists that are awful and they make a good living doing art. And maybe they didn't do all the right things. Maybe they didn't learn all the right drawing stuff, right? This weird kind of moralistic world where like everybody who has bad things happen is a bad guy, and everybody who has good things happen is a good guy. And the bad guy might be happy now, but the good guy is going to come and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is not the world we live in. I mean, that's like part of why a lot of people have like faith in something beyond here, right? Is the idea of like justice, because you're not going to see full justice on this earth. Like, the illusion that you're just going to instantly see like full justice for every single bad actor is like, what planet do these people live on? It's like this cartoonish vision of reality, and again, it just lacks nuance. It's like, this bad, this good, bad get punished, good get rewarded. And it's like, no, that's why stories are great. That's why people like reading about like superheroes and stuff like that, because like, it's fun to have the fantasy that like all things work out, right? That all the like threads kind of tie, and that everybody gets justice. But it's like, that's not the world that at least as I've experienced it. I don't think most people my age would make the claim like, you know what, guys, they might be having fun now, but later they're going to regret it. It's like, you actually kind of don't know. Like, like, I know people who did everything right, and like, it just got kind of screwed just by like the lottery. It's just a weird, again, I'm not saying my scenario that I'm describing here is like everybody, but the idea of this like weird, again, just like very black and white, unnuanced take on kind of life, it's just a really weird kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's even a right versus left thing. I think that might just specifically be this Tim Pool guy, where it's like very, very weird kind of takes, Anyhow, let's continue. Philip said, good evening, just on a break at work. Nice. Glad to keep you company on your break, my dude. Paul says, I hate this idea that millennials are incompetent and stuff. It's us older people that have ruined things. That's true.
Bad, suffering from some ailment. And the doctor comes in with a chart and says, Ms. Handler, it is terminal. Is there anyone we should call? And she just sits there and says, no. And they say, okay, well, we're press the button if you need us. And they walk out, and then she just sits there. That is hell in my view. That is a nightmare scenario to me. I'm not saying it's absolutely will happen to her. She maybe has friends. However, what I've learned from older people, the scariest thing I've heard from older people, I remember, let me tell you a story. I was in Chicago. I was 18. I was skateboarding.
Another anecdote.
I went and got some pizza. Wait. I had some leftovers.
Wait. He was in Chicago doing what? What was he doing? skateboarding like a cool guy. It's cool, Tim Pool. He's like, I was in Chicago, you know, with my skateboard and my guitar and my gun and my katana. I was just, you know, hanging out there, just boarding, you know, boarding like the guys. Excuse me, I don't know what happened to the view here. So let's kind of refresh. Something weird happened. It like minimized the view. It's just cool Tim Pool. He was skateboarding his way out of my view here. Oh, here we go.
A homeless old black man hanging out, smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, hey, my man, you want some pizza? And he's
Why
like,
did that
yeah,
get-
hell yeah, brother. And I walk over
I'm trying
and
to
I was like, can I
pause
ask you a
it.
question?
There we go.
I was like, are you homeless?
There we go.
And he's like, I said, I am. And I said, how did that happen? The story he told me was that he worked at the post office for most of his life. And he got older. His friends and family had died. He was unmarried. He had an apartment. You know, once he gets into his like mid to late 60s, doesn't really have any friends anymore. And then they laid him off. His money started to run, unemployment at first, starts to run out of money. Eventually can't afford to pay his bills anymore, gets evicted. He has no one to call, no one to turn to. So now he lives on the streets. And I'm like, damn, that's terrifying.
No.
And so my fear is for someone like Chelsea Handler, I don't care what she does. She can live however she wants to live. But I do believe that there's a high likelihood that people like her will find themselves in what the average person would describe as a nightmare scenario of no one cares about you. No.
It's so myopic, dude. Like, first off, he's making a weird assumption that, like, again, betrays his youth, right? First off, he's making the assumption, like, okay, here's the harsh truth, right? Like, between my wife and I, one of us is going to die first, okay? What happens to the other one? If we did everything right, we got married, all of that stuff, the other one's screwed for, like, that loving family or whatever. That's the person who's been by your side all your life. He's like writing this fiction as though everyone's going to die just surrounded by the people they love. That's just not how it works. Not everybody dies in the hospital. Some people die just like walking to the kitchen to get coffee, you know? Like they're just going to get a refill of coffee and slip and life gone. Life is not this like weird moralistic drama that he's painting it as, right? Like it's just so weird. Gary said, for reference, Tim Pool is unmarried, no kids, has used his millions to build a skate park. He's on shaky ground talking about people not finding meaning. But he's cool, man. He skateboards, you know, just like you. He knows who Chelsea Handler is.
one knows where you are and you die alone.
Yeah.
Well,
and
we're
there's no way
becoming
that she
atomized.
hasn't thought about that too. I mean, she definitely hasn't. I know a lot of people who have meaningful lives and they accent them with
Did you notice the yes ending again? It's just like, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with you, Tim. Oh, cool. Let's go skating after the show because we're all buds. Gary said, yes, I suspect someday, 10, 20, 30 years from now, he might rewatch this and cringe, as any of us would if we saw a young version of ourselves talking about what gives life meaning. For sure. Well, it's also like watching this like dude here, this John Doyle guy, you know, talk about masculinity. With his like boy beard, you know, like sorry, it's like it doesn't even look like his beard could fully come out. It looks like the kid who started shaving. I'm sorry to get, but I'm just saying, this guy's talking about, man, we got to return to the days when people would fight to the death in Thunderdomes. And he's like a 23-year-old who just grew his first facial hair. It's so weird. Okay, let's continue.
things
Beard
that, you know, maybe the
shaming.
right would be like, oh, this is degenerate. There's no way you're happy. But it's like, you know, they have their accomplishments. They have their empire, whatever it may be. But someone in that position, I don't even know who Chelsea Handler is. But I imagine this is a famous person who has been successful, maybe has passed their prime or something. And so they're going to make a video like, oh, look at all I do is masturbate and smoke weed all day. I don't believe that that is possible to even achieve happiness longer than a week. If you wake up and all you do is smoke weed and masturbate, you're literally biologically eroding your capacity to feel that euphoria that you are now drawn to through your dopamine receptors, because that diminishes over time, which is literally your brain trying to like save.
Oh, somehow it froze. Oh, okay. It's an ad for 2 Robins and no Batman.
Oh yeah. Oh,
This is
that's
mad.
right. Holy lady boner.
Okay.
Brain trying to like save you from that binging mechanism.
And I think a lot of people who are parents, they were responding to Chelsea Handler saying, because her whole thing was like, I'm still happy even though I'm unmarried and single. I can go to Paris and do all of these things. And it's like, Chelsea, you are, how old is she? She's
48.
50 years old. Like, you easily could have kids who are now adults and still be doing all of the things that you're doing. We're so obsessed with immediate gratification. I feel like, especially millennials, we have this idea.
When did we return to the world where, you know, I'm a parent. I think that having a kid was like the smartest decision I ever made. Like, my son is like, it brings so much joy to my life, right? I could wax about it for hours and bore the crap out of people who aren't parents. But like, when did we return? Like, again, it's this weird puritanical thing, like, and not a Christian thing, like, because this is different. It's like this weird puritanical, because actually, weirdly enough, like, I believe even in Christianity, it says pretty much something like people who can stay single are actually blessed. Like, that's actually biblical. so I just wanted to say, because I think Paul was like, Paul the apostle or whatever was like single his whole life, right? And like talked about it. Like, it's actually better if you can not like get married. It's like your life's going to be better. That's what Paul said in the Bible. I don't know. Being that this woman's religious, right? It might be good for her to know that that's in her text. Not only that, I know Tim isn't, but I'm just saying, when did this like weird kind of like, it's not even Christian. It's like the Quakers. It's like Quakerism coming back, where it's like, should we shun electricity? Should we like, you know, go and live out in the wild and like shun all things and like shame all things, and like your life is not meaningful if you don't have children? Like, again, like, I am a fan of the idea of children being a very meaningful thing in your life that probably will be the best decision you make, right? But I'm a parent. I made that decision. It doesn't mean like I have a sister who didn't. I have a sister who did. The sister who didn't does get to vacation a lot and do a lot of fun things with her life, like more than we do as parents. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not like going around to my sister and shaming her and being like, you need to have children to be blah, blah, blah. It's like, where did this come from? Why are we cycling back to like the worst elements of like the 1950s in this like weird red pill space? I don't understand it. I mean, it's just it's the best decision I've made, but it's not for everybody. In fact, there's some people I might be like, you probably shouldn't be a parent. You know, like there's a lot of people out there that actually maybe they shouldn't have made that decision. It's just it's just so weird. Yeah, I mean, Gary even pointed it out. He said the implication seems to be the good old fashioned women need to have a kid to give their life meaning and hold their hand when they die. I mean, I don't even understand it. I don't understand. Yeah, Marsh was saying it's better to be single because you can focus on serving the Lord, but there's nothing wrong with being a family and serving that way either. I think it was just Paul's preference. I do too, but I'm just saying that like it's so weird that like this lady who's calling herself like religious is saying like, oh, and these women are going to be so unfulfilled because they don't have children. And like there's biblical verses that talk about, yes, children are a blessing for sure. Like the more arrows in your quiver, it's like a Proverbs thing, but it's like, at the same time, like you also have Paul very explicitly saying that you're actually probably better off if you can kind of remain celibate for like your entire life. That's the weirdest thing that like, again, if you're going to grandstand on like religious grounds, grandstand with backing of what you're saying. It's just bizarre. It's like, but instead they want to go with like the cartoon, like 1950s version of like society, which I don't even think people were like in the 50s. It's very bizarre. Yeah, Frank said not everyone should be a parent. Yeah, for sure. So this lady is saying, she's basically saying that, if you're a woman and you're traveling around and you're enjoying traveling around the world and you're saying you're fulfilled, you're not really fulfilled because you could have had kids and then done that. It's like that weird social pressure that's put on women to have kids. And I know a lot of women, like, that's a really shitty thing to lay on women, because sometimes some women like wanted to and life didn't work out for them in that way. Like, it's just so absurd. This kind of weird, very like, it's hard to say. It's like a science fiction world. It feels very strange and very repressive. Speaking of that, we're getting rid of lamps, guys. I got rid of lamps on this page. There's no lamps left, or lamp shades, I should say. So now they're all oil lamps, and we're good to move on to the next lamp. So let me make sure that is indicated in red. Lamps better beware. You know what I'm saying? I'm on the lookout for lamps. I'm on the lookout for lampshades here, guys. And those lampshades are going to go hard. They're getting out of here. If I see a lampshade come to my house, I'm like, get out of here, lampshade. You're not historically accurate. Okay. Page 73, final 2. We're moving on to page 74. I thought we just did page 74. Maybe I'm crazy. We have not yet done page 74. So let's open up page 74. We only have 3 pages left to go, guys. Look, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. This is tedious and hard to do commentary on, but it's hilarious. But I'm doing the hard work here of killing lamps and doing commentary on what is almost unbearable to listen to, and making it funny, making it in the content, taking a little bit out of me to do. So just, if you can, give me a little thanks for doing the hard work, the Lord's work here. Hit the like button, right? Hit the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live. I need a moment. I'm gonna step away and get some water, because this is rough. So we're gonna continue the spice, okay? We're gonna continue taking down lamps like madmen, and all I ask in return is that you hit that like button, and we will play you a brief ad by Mr. Jim Lujan, since Jim just joined us in the chats. In honor of Jim Lujan, here is Wordzoid.
Well, Peter, since I'm such a big music fan, I'm gonna have to go with Karen Carpenter. Oh, Stu, I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. Trish, what you got for us?
I'm gonna go with Kim Gordon.
All right, let's check that answer. Kim Gordon. Do we have a Kim Gordon?
Yes, and that means you're our new Wordzoid champion, Trish. Dale, tell Trish what she's won.
Trish, you've won a copy of 2 stories, a memoir of faith and mental illness. Handwritten, hand-drawn, and handed to you by artist and writer Joshua Kemble.
But wait, that's not all.
You've also won a copy of Jacob's Apartment,
The story of a doomed romance. What happens when you take Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and put it in a blender with Ghost World? You get Jacob's Apartment, written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. Trish, thank you for playing Wordzoid.
All right, great job, Trish. I was told I was gonna get a lifetime supply of paper towels.
All right, guys. We're going to continue to kill lamps. I'm guessing we'll probably take a break after the lamps are destroyed here in the rest of these comics. And I might have dinner or something and then live stream even longer, because that's what I like to do here. Jim asks a really important question. There's a couple cool things in chat I want to highlight. So Paul was saying it also depends on how many children you have. I advise all my kids to have 1 kid if you want to be happy. Hey, my wife and I were sticking to 1 kid. Gary said, and we're very happy. Gary said, what did Gary say here? Oh, it's an appeal to tradition. Basically, they're proclaiming children are the only path to life meaning without a lot of necessary asterisks. And also, it's like circular logic because it's like they're making that assumption and then therefore basing all worldviews based on that, which again, that's like a personal preference kind of thing. Frank said, it's not an exclusive thing. You can travel and have kids. You can travel before you have kids too. True. But also, it's not like you have to do that. Like, you can also travel and not have kids. Like, that's your choice in life. Jim said, why are you so pro aquarium and anti lamp, Josh? Nice. Whose deep pockets are you in? I cannot reveal my sponsors. Frank said, hello, friends and frenemies. My apologies for not addressing you all first. Nice. That's Frank is our mod, so definitely make sure you say hi to Frank. Play nice with Frank. He's a good mod. Also support his work. He's a good dude. Also, while you're at it, Marsh was in the chats. Make sure you check out Marsh's art channel. It's pretty amazing. He's been doing a lot of really cool live streams. We got Vic in the house. Vic said, maybe I shouldn't comment on this given my age and lack of maturity in terms of stuff revolving around children's. Well, let's just put it this way, Vic. Up until I was like 30, I was like, my wife and I were both like pretty adamant about never having kids. And then we changed our minds. And it was the best decision we ever made. But I think before that, I would have been like the guy on a YouTube show rattling off that it's a bad decision. Luckily, like we mature and change our minds as we get older. Paul said, welcome, Frank. Welcome, Jim. Obviously no lamp. The thing that I'm weirded out by is like, here I am. I'm the old guy in the room, right? I'm listening to like people who are literally like half my age talk about relationships and stuff like this. And I'm like, when did everybody in their early 20s become like the most prudish? Like, it's just weird. You're in your early 20s. Why are you like becoming like puritanical, like prudes? Like, I'm supposed to be a puritanical prude. Like, that's my age range. Like, let's keep it. We're supposed to be looking at 20-year-olds. Like, it's like the rock and roll thing too, where I feel like a lot of modern rock isn't like dangerous. I'm supposed to be frightened to death of the music that's coming out today. I need to be like really worried for my son's future, right? Instead, I'm looking at like most modern rock and I'm like, this is like milk toast, just like boring crap. Like, I don't understand it. And I'm not threatened by it, which is a problem. Like, I'm 40. I should be threatened by that stuff. I'm in my 40s. Let's see here. Philip said, sorry, Vic, I'm vegan. Nice. Oh, Vic was talking about moose milk. Nice. Vic, you can talk however you want, man. You have the freedom to express yourself. And your opinion is valid regardless of age. Nice. Marsh said she got robbed of her paper towels and probably lamps. Nice. Paul said, don't hate Josh because he doesn't want lamps. That's right. I have my preferences when it comes to lamps. And I'm just saying, if we meet up at some point, you know, I think Jim can attest to this. Like, everywhere I show up, like if we go out to eat, I'm just glaring at the lampshades. And I'm like, you evil lampshades, I'm taking you out of the picture. And Jim's like, hey, Josh, be cool, man. And I'm like, was that lamp looking at me? And he's like, no, Josh, just like, we're just talking about art, man. Everything's cool. And I'm like, was that lamp looking at me? And he's like, no, everything's cool. Like, back down, Josh. And I'm like, I don't know, lamp. It looks like that lamp was looking at me. Anyhow, we got Philip saying I'm refraining from commenting on this discussion because I could get a lot of people mad at me. Yeah, have fun. Vic said, stop having so many kids. Overpopulation is freaking crazy. Nice. Vic said he got paid off by Big Aquarium, and that's the last thing Vic's gonna say. And then Philip said, not by a long shot, Josh. Nice. I don't know what that was in regards to. Sorry. Marsh said, I didn't have kids in my previous relationship, and it was really for the best for a lot of reasons. Nice. I mean, like, yeah, that's the weird thing. Like, again, it's not for everybody, and also sometimes maybe it's not the best call. Paul says early 20s is time to get your freak on. Yeah, that's right. We should be looking at people in their early 20s and being like, oh my goodness, you guys need some morals. Instead of like watching these like weird moralistic youth kids who are like trying to dictate how people can live their lives. And like, I don't know, also try to, on one hand, they want this kind of like very like closed off, like rigid society, and on the other they want like thunderdomes where kids fight to the death over Legos. I can't decide. Paul said get in a bar fight with a lamp. You got to talk to Jim about that, but like he usually holds me back. I'm like, hold my beer, Jim, and he's like, no. It's like, Josh, you just got to let the lamp let it just shine its light. I'm like, I don't know, man, that light was shining on me. I don't know if anyhow, let's continue to kill lamps, and we're going to assassinate our lamps and on the next few pages of comics and continue our commentary. I think I'm ready. I think I'm riled up. You guys in comments, you got me ready for round 2. Ding.
Where if you're a parent, it's like you have a newborn strapped to you always for the rest of your life, which is just not what parenthood is. Like, kids grow up, they go through different phases. You're not going to be up sleepless nights forever.
And two, they would have to explain then why, and this isn't everything, but it's not nothing. The profile of the person who is the statistically most likely to be depressed.
This isn't everything, but it's not nothing is usually the start to a really bad argument. But let's continue.
In this country is the middle-aged, single, childless working woman. So if it were really a lifestyle that not only works but is ideal and liberating, then why is that the result? Then that
I don't know necessarily. One, I don't know if that's true, but also if we want to go by stats, isn't the most likely to kill themselves like the middle-aged white man
experiencing depression
whose family is already left out? Like,
are different between men and women, though.
I think it's important to figure out like what is it in life that brings you happiness, what is it in life that fulfills you, and then kind of like move in that direction. Like, in some ways, I feel like Chelsea Handler is a good example of, maybe we look at her like, oh, she's not going to find much fulfillment. She's not going to like this, blah, 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 blah. But like, do you think she would have been a good parent? Maybe it's better that people like that don't have kids.
Yeah,
right? If they really don't want to, if they really feel like they would have been burdened. Yeah, go ahead.
Great point.
I think we can have both of that. We could say.
So Destiny, again, like he's matching the energy of this like kind of casual disagreement, the like, oh, I'm cool, Tim Pool, I got a skate park and we're going to talk about really contentious politics really casually. But I like that he pushed back on that, and I like that Destiny kind of brought up the obvious that I had brought up. Again, this is my first time watching this video, but it's like, it's pretty obvious, like, to anyone I think listening, where you're just like, well, yeah, but like, what about people who maybe they shouldn't have kids? Like, there's definitely people who don't need to. So we're going to hear our lady who's trying to advocate that all women will only find fulfillment with children. And we'll continue that.
Like, having this hedonistic, excessive, very materialistic lifestyle, it's not going to lead to fulfillment, but also we should examine why someone like that exists in the first place. So it's a societal problem as much as it is a personal problem, I think.
To Destiny's point, I think that men and women experience depression a lot differently. I think that women experience depression in a much more environmental sense. Like, if they are in an environment that they are not happy with, they're not enjoying, they will feel depressed. When men experience depression, I think it's much more that they see no way out of that environment, which is why I think too, like, it's common that we say women are more likely to attempt suicide, men are more likely to actually commit suicide, because women will be, maybe in a low emotional state and they'll just kind of lash out and like try to hurt themselves.
Let's pause here and just make a guess, okay? I'm going to pretend that I can see the future. Is he somehow going to tie in like the suicide rate to like masculinity and Thunderdome fighting? Let's see.
But men will be like, okay, I have done the math, this is not going to work out, and they'll just like blow their head off with a shotgun. And I think that's because like this whole society that we've cultivated doesn't allow for avenues for people to pursue meaning the way that they would have even in their grandparents' generation. I mean,
I don't know if it's so much about meaning as like the destigmatization of hard conversations about mental illness might help that issue. That's one of the reasons I wrote 2 stories. The other thing to kind of think about is like, maybe your boy Reagan, like, because this guy, I guarantee you, is big on Reagan. Your boy Reagan, when he closed half the mental health facilities in the U.S., maybe that wasn't a good decision. Maybe we need more support for people with mental health issues. I don't know. Maybe that could be a good thing. I don't know.
You know, boomers don't like this, but it is true that like on a single income, you could get a nice house in a safe neighborhood. You could get a moral spouse, didn't have to worry about them being like, you know, some red pill guy, didn't have to worry about them being like an OnlyFans thought. They were just more or less normal people. And you could have that, you know, summer home, a boat, cars.
This guy has the weirdest vision of the past. Like, did he just watch a bunch of movies and go, that's life? Like, it's really hard to wrap my head around this. This guy's saying there was a time in our country where everybody was moral and everybody was happy in their marriages and nobody had any problems, and we've gotten away from that. And it's like, what time in your country are you talking about? What time are we talking about here? Where people were like forced into, you know, relationships they weren't happy with because of total dependence and societal pressure to kind of stick with it, even if there was spousal abuse, like that era. Like back in the day, you used to be able to marry a guy who'd beat the crap out of you and then blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's the weirdest. This guy's life, his vision of history is cartoonish. I cannot understand this John Doyle guy. I guarantee you, because like his description of the U.S. and the past is like a John Wayne movie. That's how he views like all of the past in the U.S. was like everybody was like a cowboy. He described high school as everybody in high school used to be the captain of the college football team, which is illogical in itself. Like everybody can't be a captain, but like, there's usually one captain. But you know, back in the day, nowadays, there's only one captain on the football team. Back when America was great, all men were captain of the football team. And it's like all it takes is just one follow-up question of like, wait, who played? Like if everybody was captain, like who was, you know, who was the running back? Anyhow, let's continue.
Without going into the debt that you have to now, without having to deal with this sort of like societal disintegration that our generations are having to deal with, that does weigh on people. And I don't think that there's even a way out of that, but we seem to be distracting from that reality that we all know with things like, you know, the hedonism.
It's not
and
a reality we all know.
Pleasure, this sort of like narcissism that we see with like, I'm not going to have kids. Ew, I'm just going to go like travel and smoke weed and do whatever. And it's like, ultimately, there's going to reach a point where these people realize that that is not going to, you know, make them happy. And especially women, when they're past the point where they can have kids,
looping,
they are going to
we've
snap.
had that
I am
discussion.
genuinely afraid of what that's going to do to society.
Okay, here's where I'm going to go my atheist rant, though. And I'm going to shut on. Both you guys are religious, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Okay. This is my, okay.
I feel like we haven't been bringing up religion that much.
No, that's why I said I'm about to.
Okay. I thought we were like being too Christian for people. I thought like, oh, look at us moderates.
Okay, don't worry. We'll bring the atheism in here. This is why Christianity sucks, and it's why all the Christian talking.
Wait, moderates? What planet are we living on? She just said, I thought we were being just moderates. You're being a moderate? You think like wildly stating that like all women are miserable unless they have kids. That like all these things about like, you know, saying really incendiary things about like gay marriages that are raising kids and how they can't be parents. Saying all sorts of like really wild kind of like out there stuff that's very partisan, very hedged, makes it very clear what your beliefs are. And then you're calling yourself moderate? Like what part of John Doyle and this lady in this entire conversation has been moderate? I feel like weirdly enough, I don't even think Tim Pool is a moderate, but I can see why maybe he'd pick people like this to be on his show. Cause comparatively, he looks really moderate compared to them. But I don't understand like Tim, who's like made some very far right propositions, especially on the last one that I watched of his, and calls himself a moderate. And then these people calling themselves moderates, it's like, it's insane. Like, does anybody remember what a moderate is? Anyhow, let's continue. But like nothing they were saying was moderate. Where are these people getting this moderate label? It's like, it almost annoys me as much as, like, I will admit, I get annoyed when friends of mine who are like really far left, like I'm kind of left leaning, I'm pretty far left, but they're like way further left than me, like full out, straight up, like pro communism, right? And I mean like legitimate, like they actually believe communism's a great idea, like not socialism, communism, like they're straight up legit communists. I have friends that lean that way and will openly say it, and they want like radical change that's like way further than anything I'd ever advocate for. They annoy me when they personify, like they'll call Bernie Sanders a moderate, and this is left leaning people will call Bernie a moderate. And while I really liked Bernie Sanders, I agreed with like most of his platform and stuff like that, I will totally admit that Bernie Sanders is really far left to most of the country, right? Like even if I look at his positions and I'm like, hey, these are pretty reasonable, they aren't that far left. To me, they're not far left. But if I called Bernie Sanders a moderate, everyone I know who even slightly leans right would be like, are you insane? He's a far left guy. He was a far left candidate for sure. That's part of the far left. Maybe it's not as far fringe as it goes, but he's definitely far left. I'm not going to make the claim that Sanders is moderate. These people on this show, like none of these people are representing moderate positions. All they're representing is that they've never had a conversation with people they live near that are left. Because like all you'd have to do is talk to anybody who leans left in the slightest and say half of what was said on the show, and you would realize like nothing about this is moderate at all. Like it hasn't been moderate. Yeah, it's so weird. Where did they get this idea of moderate?
Points suck. The world today as it exists is different than it ever has been. We have to find a way to offer people some avenue for fulfillment that doesn't require us resetting the clock 30, 40, 50, 100 years on civilization. This is why I'll always fight with Christians or red pillars or whatever, people that are like, we need to get rid of the pill or birth control. That's never happening. Women need to go back to the home and need to stop working so much. That's never happening.
Nice.
These are two of probably the most massive things that have changed society. And these are two of the things that I hear people complain about the most, that women are being too masculinized, that women can sleep around now, they don't have to get married, blah, blah, blah. These are two things that are never changing. Whatever solution we're offering men or people in general in the world going forward, I don't think it can be like a return to tradition where we go back to the way things were 100 years ago, because that's never.
How does that
happen.
relate to Christianity and atheism, though?
Because when I hear people, because I think that the world today has become a bit more secular in terms of how we look for happiness and fulfillment. And I think that Christians like to fall back a lot on like, well, the Bible has all the answers you need. All of your metaphysical, all of your ethical, all of your epistemic truths can be found in the Bible. We just have to go back to church. We have to do that. And I feel like overall, like the traditional lifestyle, I think for a long time, people assumed that traditional lifestyle, we're just biologically inclined towards it. Women want to have kids, men want to be fathers. And it's like, well, put in a society with birth control and jobs, people actually are making way different choices than we ever thought they would before. So it seems like that biological drive is not as strong as it was. The religion aspect is probably not coming back. So I think we have to have better answers for going forward in the future, other than just like we need to be tradcon or we need to, bring God back into the world or whatever. It has to be different. Right? Even to what you said, like, oh, like it's hard to afford things today. You could have like a boat house or a boat and a house on the waterfront and blah, blah, blah with a single income. Yeah, but the world was a lot different back then too. You didn't have the huge cities we have today. You didn't have all the opportunities that exist in those cities. You didn't have cell phones or the internet. You didn't have video games. Like they had access to like property, but like what they could do with those properties and the opportunity and everything available to them was also way, 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 way.
Actually, Destiny is making a really good point, because there is this kind of weird idea sometimes where it's like, actually, that's a good point Gary just made. I'm going to read that in a second. But the bizarre part that I'm hearing here, and actually that I think Destiny's dead on about, is there is this tendency to look back at the past with like bright eyes, as if it was like this beautiful place. It's a nostalgia. It's just built into like ourselves communally. It's just a fun way to learn history. It's fun to look back and be like, yeah, back in the day, people could buy houses. But then you think about like the quality of those homes, or like the fact that like a lot of those homes didn't have air conditioning, or the fact that like the majority of people used to die at like age 50, at like that's the old age that people used to die at, like in general. And you look at the fact that like the access they had to information and knowledge was like much more limited. You look at, you know, even assuming that the house thing is correct, because that was a specific group of people who could have houses. It wasn't all people. And you go back, like it's what I like to call like the Jane Austen story conundrum, which, like, you know, people will probably have like reading this book that I'm working on about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, where people will read this and they'll be like, man, it would be fun to live in like Victorian era, you know, it'd be so cool. And they'll think of themselves as like Elizabeth Barrett Browning or Robert Browning when they were really wealthy. Like they were insanely wealthy. Even Elizabeth's family that was like supposedly being driven to poverty was an embarrassment among the wealthy because they only had like 2 maids. I mean, these people had maids, right? If somebody of my class, like, and the majority of people who watch this was in like Elizabeth Barrett Browning time, we'd be the wait staff, right? If we were lucky, right? Or we'd be like laboring over like, you know, laying track for a railway. You know, our kids would be working in factories because like they didn't have child labor laws at that time. Like, this wasn't like ideal for everyone. The Victorian movie is representing like a very small snapshot, a small window of like one class of people, usually in like a house, having like, you know, romance and courting. It's not like documenting like the guy who's like signing up for war and like the average working class person. Again, like the world isn't the 1950s. And even if you give it that, even if you go as far as to say like, okay, in the 1950s, everyone owned homes, which is not true. Everyone didn't own homes in the 1950s. But let's pretend, I mean, I think homes were a little more accessible. So let's give them that. But even with that, even if we grant that, like the assumption that things were better when like most of us this day and age, even if we have a 1-bedroom apartment, are living better than a feudal lord in the medieval era. You know, like the richest man in the medieval time didn't have control over the temperature in their place. Most of us do have some kind of control over whether it gets hot or cold in our house. And we don't have to rely on like chopped wood, like burning in a, you know, like a wood burning stove or something to heat our place. It's like, yeah, I mean, Gary points this out really well. He said, yes, homes were more accessible. So was polio, right? Like the other thing to think about with like people who romanticize the past, right, is like also like infant mortality was like off the charts. Like it's off the charts, like how bad infant mortality was. Like, you know, so it's like, oh, it's this idealistic picture, but then like people were having more miscarriages. Like it's so bad. Anyhow, we're at the 2-hour mark. We've killed some lamps again. These lamps will not come back. These lamps, I'm sorry to say, you guys, in the book, no lamps. No lamps to be seen. Okay, so we have page 74 done. We're going to go ahead and I'm just going to highlight that. Oh, I need to save the JPEG for it. So we'll do that, and then we'll play a trailer. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more commentary, and then we'll do a trailer.
Way less. I think the biological drives remain. They just may be channeled in different ways. Like men aren't exactly like going to war the way we used to, but we spend a lot of time watching
with, like,
other men fight or compete
war.
in, you know, grand athletic displays or things like that. Or even women, for example. Yeah, they're not having children maybe as much as they used to, but even you see in the trends on social media, like, you know, the feminine urge to do this. I mean, there's a reason those things go viral. It does resonate to some degree with women, even if it's not possible. And I also think it's true that women are far more susceptible to like social pressures.
Yes.
And if every institution and person in the media is telling them like, this is lame, you need to go be like, you know, what's her face, they're gonna be like, oh, okay. Like they think it's a low status opinion to want to pursue motherhood, and they're actually shamed for that more so than they would have been when they were being taught to do that.
Yep.
They want to, it is so just, it's so cartoonish, and it's annoying to me because like I have friends who lean right and they're not this crazy. Like, again, this is very not moderate. That's all I want to say. You know, I don't even feel like I have to defend those friends because I don't agree with them. But like, still, to be fair, this is not the best representation of like a moderate, like right-leaning individual. I don't know why I'm saving this. Let me try this again. I keep saving a copy, right? I'm saving a copy of this. I'm saving it in the right folder. I'm going to go ahead and save it by that name. And it should appear in that folder. So I don't know if my computer's doing something weird. Okay. Page 74. We're checking. There it is. There you are, my dead lamp page. It should be there, and it's not. I just saved it in that folder. That's so bizarre. So something weird is happening with my something very strange is happening with this. Let's see. Let's try file view, sort by date added. That's insane. Are we saving it in the right folder? Save a copy. It's bizarre because when I save it in this folder too, okay, it is in the folder. Just for some reason, the folder shortcut isn't working for me. So I'm going to have to reload it. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the trailer for, let's see here. We'll do Christopher Runciman's amazing testimonial about my book. If you guys haven't yet, hit the like button. We're probably going to go for, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to finish The Killing of Lamps before kind of taking a break for dinner. There might be some lamps that survive till the next stream, which will be later tonight. But we are going to go probably like one more page or so if I can get these. Let's see here. As columns, if I can get this this page to work. Let me just test something real quick. Okay, well, while I'm looking this up, what I'll do is play a trailer for you guys. So it's going to be Christopher Runciman's review, and I'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Chris, and I like comics. I want to talk about this comic for a second here. I just got this in. I ordered it direct from my local comic shop through Diamond Distributing. It's Joshua Kemble's Jacob's Apartment. I really enjoyed this book. There's all kinds of comics out there, let's be honest. There's fun comics, there's superhero comics, there's young adult comics, there's adventure comics for kids. There's so many different things on the planet. But there's also an entire subgenre of alternative books. Real life, real world depictions in comic book form. Situations that happen to each and every one of us. And this is a fine example of that. If you get a chance, order this book from your local comic shop. You won't be disappointed. I can't sing its praises high enough. Okay? Check it out. Jacob's Apartment by Joshua Kemble.
All right, we're back, and I'm still having issues with saving this file, which is bizarre. Oh, and let's see. Let's get this screen back on. So you know what? We might have to like kind of. Marsh said, "I definitely feel lucky to have lived in this time and place, considering all the other situations I could have been in." Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like there's just a weird tendency of people when they get kind of stuck in this kind of rut with like kind of thinking about the past. I even wrote a song about it. If you guys are ever bored, you can look it up on YouTube. Where it's called "Things Are Better." Things were better then, and it's kind of riffing on the idea that like people who are kind of doing that whole like the good old days kind of discussion, and just sort of ignoring like a lot of the progress we made. Like, you know, people will be like all excited to have their weekend, you know, after a long week of work, you know, and not realize that like that's a relatively new thing. Like the weekend, the idea of a weekend, like the working class for a long time just worked like, you know, 7 days a week. And those moves weren't made, you know, like naturally. Like it's not like we've always had weekends. And so they'll be like on a Saturday on their day off from work, like complaining about, man, things were way better when they didn't have all these labor laws. And it's like, well, how far back do you want to go? Okay, guys, we've killed a lot of lamps. My computer's being weird, so I got to restart. It might be too much streaming lately. So what we'll do is we're going to call it for the lamp killing. We'll continue slaughtering lamps like maniacs on the next live stream. So make sure you've hit that bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live. I really appreciate you guys, no matter what your political output or opinion is. And I appreciate everybody in the chats. It was a really fun, lively discussion. I hope I kept you company while you were making art. I'm going to go eat food, and then I will continue to stream a little bit later, probably a night stream tonight. Like there will be a night gang. Nice. Gary said, a few days ago, I was streaming music, cooking with ingredients you can't grow in Arizona in an air-conditioned house with all of my teeth. Other than that, he said, any other era, I would think I was living in a Star Trek life. Yeah, truth. Marsh said, nice work, man. Have a great night. I am looking forward to it. I plan on streaming more while I do the rest of these revisions, but my computer needs a break. Because for some reason, when I'm saving a file, it's not registering in the folder. So we got to restart. So I'll see you guys on the next one. And thank you. And if you haven't yet, consider picking up my books too. And I will see you on the next live stream later. Goodbye.